CVPR's CVPR has been pleased to work with SJCOG for many years now on these events. Today, we're going to be exploring what AI means for jobs, business, and the workforce in San Joaquin County. It's a question that workers, employers, and policymakers are increasingly asking as the technology moves rapidly forward in terms of its implementation and use from concepts. My take through this presentation today is that we start the beginnings of a series of necessary conversations around the implications of AI, grounded in meaningful answers, not driven by hyper fear, but looking consistently and meaningfully at what analysis and what real world experiences are telling us, as well as what leading analysis is showing. To start us off in that regard, today we have two excellent speakers. First up will be Dr. Ezra Gould, a research analyst from the Center for Business and Policy Research. She's going to be presenting findings on a recent CBPR working research analyst paper that has analyzed the impacts of artificial intelligence on San Joaquin County and the North San Joaquin Valley and Northern California mega region. That shows that while, at least in San Joaquin County, AI is likely to change the nature of a lot of work, it's not, at least currently, likely to replace a lot of jobs. It also is going to have important implications in terms of job quality and skills, and Ezra will be discussing that as well. Following Ezra, we'll have Jeff Gilbert. Very pleased to have him. He's CEO and founder of Verve IT, and he will be giving us a practitioner's perspective, looking at what it means in terms of businesses and actual on-the-ground implementation of the technology, looking at the pace of change that the applications have been evolving, as well as how autonomous systems are continually evolving on a day-to-day basis. Together, they provided some focus on what we need to be considering, and I think importantly pointing out that the story of AI isn't about whether it's augmenting or replacing labor. It's much more nuanced, and it's about how do we prepare in our own lives as individuals, in our businesses, in our communities, but also in our region for what are the implications of AI, and are we ready to leverage those opportunities that it's creating, or are we going to be just responding to the impacts of it upon ourselves, our community members, and our organizations? It's an important conversation, and really pleased that you're all here to join us in taking part of this today. If you have a pressing question, you're welcome to ask it. But in general, what we would like to do during the format of these is give Ezra and Jeff time to present both of their presentations in full, and then we reserve time at the end for a question and answer session. Again, if you have something pressing, obviously, I'm sure they won't mind too much if you ask it at the time. With that, I'm going to hand it over to Ezra to walk you through her presentation on the impacts of AI on the San Joaquin County. Thank you.
Hello. Let me set this up. Hi, everyone. Can you hear me? Okay. I'm too short for this. Hello? Well, I hope you can hear me in the rest of the presentation. I will do my best. Hi, my name is Esra. Today, first of all, thank you so much for joining the presentation. Today, I will talk about our most recent report on artificial intelligence and its impact on the job in San Joaquin County. And okay. Does this work? Clicker doesn't work. Okay, I will just click with my hands. And today, everyone is talking about AI. We always hear about artificial intelligence in the conversation. It's always in the news. And there's always new tools are coming out. We hear them about from our coworkers. And sometimes there are some alarming headlines in the news that can affect us. And today, we wanted to talk about this matter. And in the paper behind this talk, we wanted to step back and look at what we actually know about artificial intelligence, how it is changing the work, and what is the actual impact of artificial intelligence in our region. This talk and this work is not about prediction of job loss, and it's not about the forecasting the automation outcomes. This study is a careful look at where AI is most likely to change the work, how we do the job, and what occupations, what jobs is most impacted by artificial intelligence. And finally, we also, in this work and in this talk, discuss how this might impact the workers, employers, and policymakers in our region. Before going into our analysis, I would like to emphasize one distinction that matters a lot and usually gets lost in the conversations, which is automation and artificial intelligence are not the same thing. So automation says and asks, do this automatically. It follows fixed and predetermined rules. It repeats a task the same way every time. Its goal is to often replace human efforts in the jobs. But artificial intelligence is different. It says, help me do this task better, faster, with more information. Artificial intelligence uses data, identify patterns, and supports human decision. It is designed to augment some part of the job rather than replace the jobs altogether. This distinction, this study is about AI, and this distinction matters for us because understanding this distinction shifts the question from will these jobs will be replaced to how these jobs will change. And with that in mind, I will start what we measure in this study. In this study, we measure something we called artificial intelligence exposure. I'm sorry, sometimes it's difficult to turn this side because I am short and yeah. We measure something we called artificial intelligence exposure. This metric measures how much a job's daily tasks overlap with what AI technologies can do today. To explain it in a better way, I will give you two examples. Let's take two different occupations. First one is bookkeeping clerk. Their job involves tasks like preparing documents, searching for information, and processing routine financial records. These tasks can be done very well with the current AI tools. This occupation, because of the task that involves, is a high exposure occupation. On the other hand, we have construction laborers. Their job involves tasks like navigating in the job sites, handling heavy machinery, and using tools. Unfortunately, well, not unfortunately, but currently AI tools have very little to offer here. So this occupation, this job, has very low exposure to current AI technologies and tools. And I will briefly explain you how we constructed this AI exposure measure. We started with a national database, which is called ONET. And in this database, each occupation is broken down into its specific daily activities, daily tasks. And we also have information about how important these tasks to perform these jobs. From there, we looked at each activities for the jobs and categorized those activities into high, medium, and low categories by looking at how much of those tasks can be done by AI tools. For example, getting information, retrieving information is in high category because AI can do this very well, but operating machinery is in the low category because AI has very little to offer here. And finally, we looked at each occupation and how much of that occupation's daily activities is made up of tasks in the high AI category group. So this gave us an AI exposure score for each occupation. So from our analysis, we ended up with a score for each occupation, each job. But to understand the differences between the regions, we need to look at the workforce, the jobs people hold in those regions. This means we need to understand what is the industry's exposure to these AI technologies. For that, we rolled up the number of occupational AI score to industry score, and we looked at the industries with higher AI exposure and industries with lower AI exposure. Our analysis showed that something we expected, information, finance, and insurance industries have higher AI exposure, and professional, scientific, and technical services with management occupations have higher exposure than utilities, manufacturing, food services, and education and agriculture. This is important to understand the regional picture because every region has their own mix of industries. Before talking about the differences between regions, I would like to remind you the San Joaquin's distinct workforce profile. In our region, our economy is built around the industries where work is done in person, with people, with hands. In our region, the backbone of our economy is transportation and warehousing, which people do the job with their hands. And we also have very large employment in some occupations in healthcare. We also have large employment in retail and manufacturing and some occupations in education industry. These all jobs, even though they are requiring human interaction and people involvement, this doesn't mean that we don't have AI here in our region. It just means that our exposure, our story is slightly different than the story we will have in Bay Area. Which brings us to the first part of our analysis. Here in this picture, you see the county differences in AI exposure relative to San Joaquin. San Joaquin is our baseline, which is the place you see with the dashed lines. And here, the farther the regions from the San Joaquin, this means that these regions have different AI exposure than San Joaquin, the farther they are from the San Joaquin. So on the left, the regions on the left means that they are less exposed to AI than compared to us. On the right, this means that this region has job profiles that are more exposed to AI than us. If we zoom into the picture, we will see that on the further away region, on the top, we see San Francisco and Santa Clara. They have the highest AI exposure in their workforce because larger employment in their region comes from technology and information office-based jobs. And on the left, we see Merced and Stanislaus, which is which they have slightly less AI exposure than us, but this is not a big difference if you compare with San Francisco and Santa Clara, and this difference comes from the fact that they have more agricultural and production-heavy workforces. And in the middle, you see Alameda and Sacramento. They have slightly more AI exposure than us, and but it's not as far as Sacramento, San Francisco, and Santa Clara, because they have a good mixture of public sector roles and professional roles. And this picture, even it is very informative about looking at the differences between counties, but it doesn't tell us the whole story, because even two regions can have similar mix of industries, but the jobs people do in those industries can be pretty different. For this reason, to understand what's going on in specific occupational level, in specific jobs people do, we move to the next part of our analysis. Here we are looking at the 35 occupations that is the largest employment in each region. And here what you see is each shape belongs to one of these regions. And each row is a region showing where its jobs fall on the AI exposure scale. From left to right, jobs are ranked from those where AI plays a smaller role to where AI can help with a larger share of daily tasks. And taller parts you see in each shape indicates that those are the jobs people are working the most, and that is the level we see AI exposure on those jobs. If we zoom into the patterns, we see three distinct patterns that tells us three different stories. First thing, what you see in the bottom two is San Joaquin and Merced has very low AI in their workforce. People hold jobs that are mostly exposed to AI in the very low scale. As you can see, in Merced and San Joaquin, we don't see representation of the jobs with high exposure to AI. And the second thing we observe is Bay Area and Sacramento has a good mix of high exposure and low exposure jobs in their workforce. And they are mostly moved to the high exposure level, as we mentioned before. And this is because of the fact that they have good mixture of professional information-based jobs together with frontline workers. And in the middle, the most interesting story is Stanislaus, because as you can see, Stanislaus has both low exposure jobs and high exposure jobs. We know that Stanislaus has a different industry mix with San Joaquin and Merced, but when we zoom into the occupational patterns, when we look at the jobs people hold in each industry, we realize that actually the story for Stanislaus is similar to Sacramento than it is similar to the San Joaquin or Merced. This comes from the fact that even though we have similar industry mixes in our economies, the jobs people hold in Stanislaus is more administrative, clerical jobs than production-heavy or human interaction requirement jobs. So looking at the specific occupations gives us better story than looking at the big industry level picture. Here, our investigation showed us that these 5 occupations have the highest AI exposure score in San Joaquin. In the list, you see in the highest AI exposure comes from transportation and warehouse supervisors. This is because of the fact that their tasks involve scheduling, record keeping, and logistic coordination, which we know that current AI tools, current AI technologies can perform well. In the second highest AI exposure job, we see home health aides, which might come surprising, but if you think about it, their jobs involve documentation, care planning records, and information retrieval, information looking up that can be carried by AI technologies as well. And in the list, we see assemblers, then bookkeeping clerks, and teaching assistant. These are the top 5 occupations exposed to AI in our region. All these jobs and other jobs that are mostly highly exposed to AI have one thing in common that they involve large share of tasks coming from routine and structured work. Especially those jobs involve data processing, document drafting, and pattern recognition. But this doesn't mean that these jobs can be carried out by AI technologies. We still need human. Still, patients need to interact with human to feel comfortable, and healthcare providers still need to understand and interact with human to understand the current situation. And when bookkeeping clerk look at the data, AI can tell them the pattern, but that if there's something unusual, local context might matter to understand the picture than AI's understanding the situation. And also, if there is a conflict between workers in the field, we still need supervisors to go and talk with the workers to make the situation better. So in the bottom line, we see that AI helps with the tasks, but people still do the job. And I would like to conclude the talk with mentioning 4 findings from our analysis. The first thing we find out that we should focus on the shifts in the tasks that shape skills and job quality rather than looking at the job counts and thinking about the job losses. Because even though employment numbers or positions stay the same, maybe the qualifications and the tasks that we do in those jobs can change very quickly with AI. The second thing is our economy is centered around a few industries, as we saw in the previous slides. So it is especially important for us to strengthen today's jobs, making sure that workers are ready and prepared for the transition to come. So this is the only way to create tomorrow's opportunities with the AI. And this brings us to training, workforce training and upskilling, because this is the strongest strategy we can follow at the moment to make sure that no work left behind and they are ready and prepared for this transition. And finally, none of these will happen automatically. We still have, our choice matters a lot in this point, and employers' decision, public policy decision, actions by workers and community leaders will play an important role how AI affects the jobs and create new opportunities. Thank you for listening to me. I tried to provide a very quick summary of the work here. If you would like to read in more detail, and please scan the QR code, and you can also see the other works following maybe this work, and stay updated about our center. Thanks so much.
All right, the technology works. Hi, everyone. Thanks for having me. My name is Jeff Gilbert. I'm the CEO and founder of Verve IT. So a little bit about me. I'm 30 years in the industry, which blows me away sometimes when I think about that. It's been a long time, seen a lot of things in my time in the industry. Started Verve in 2006. We've provided IT services in our community now for 20 years, which is also pretty crazy. We started getting very involved in AI and data about 3 years ago. So we've been invested heavily internally in these spaces for quite a while. Last year, I actually went through a Johns Hopkins certificate program in generative AI, where I learned a tremendous amount, had a fantastic, very high-level faculty, just a tremendous opportunity to learn about generative AI, how it works, how to implement it, and I'm very thankful for that experience. We've actually been providing AI transformation and AI services to our community for the last year to year and a half. So I'm coming at this from a practitioner standpoint, a service provider standpoint, as well as a business owner. I'm very invested in the success of AI and reaping as many of the benefits as we can. So it stands a little bit different than the Pacific Report, which is really about workforce, right? Tremendous work that you guys did. I fully and wholeheartedly support the methodology and the results, and I think that is very important for us to understand because there's a lot of fear around AI, but there's also a lot of opportunity, and that's really why I'm here to talk about the opportunity. So this is a graph that, wow, this tells a huge story about the VC, so venture capital investment in AI over the last 7 years. So starting from 2019 through 2025. So I'll walk you through these boxes along the top. These are the headers. In 2025, AI funding, overall AI funding was $202 billion. That was 50% of all the venture capital money in the world. 50%. Huge number. OpenAI, who does ChatGPT alone, they're still private, is $500 billion. That's how much they're worth. $500 billion is their current valuation, and they're not even through IPO yet. Year over year, and I've done this a version of this presentation for about a year now. It's maintained this. It's year over year. The growth of the funding itself into AI is 75% year over year growth. Where you follow the money, right? This is real. It's having an impact. If you look at the graph itself, obviously we're kind of up and to the right. We have in 2025, you'll see that it reaches about 50%, and we have $200 billion of investment. These are phenomenal numbers, and they don't even touch the secondary markets, right? This is just venture capital. We're not talking about energy that's required to build these data centers and to keep them fed. We're not talking about the infrastructure. We're not talking about NVIDIA, right? Publicly traded companies that are already hitting the $1 trillion mark over and over again. So I bring you this because the context is the business side and the economic impacts and how big this is and how important this is for businesses and also our entire community, right, to engage AI intelligently. So for some of you here, I think maybe most, you've been around for a while. How many of you remember AOL, right? Right? Big deal. That was pretty awesome back in the day, right? We had this nice little dialer and the modem. You guys remember the modem sounds, right? And then it would have to redial, and maybe after the 10th dial, it would get in, and you get that "you've got mail," right? How many of us could have imagined that, 10, 15, 20 years later, we have mobile devices that are always on, that have access to your bank and the world's information. You can search for anything, right? Or a laptop that's, connected to the cloud and wireless. How many of us could have predicted that? And the point I want to make here is that we are in the AOL moment of AI. We're early. AI has been around for a decade, but in the current version, in the generative AI version, it's really only been about 3 or 4 years. OpenAI came out in 2022 with their first version of ChatGPT. We have no idea what's coming. And so what we talk about is how the AI tools are currently being used. Part of what I want to show you is some of the ways that AI is going to impact businesses beyond the workforce question, beyond AI as a helper, but actually as a fundamental part of the business environment and how that's going to transform us. Okay. So, some context. Now, you may or may not agree with this. This is what they say, right? We are in the fourth industrial revolution. Okay. It started with steam in the 1700s. We went to electricity in the 1800s. And in the late 1900s, we started working with computing. Okay. And the thing I want to draw your attention to is just how long the time ranges are. 1760 to 1840 is 80 years, right? That's how long that industrial revolution took. And as we go forward, the times start to shrink. And the point I want to make here is the fact that this industrial revolution is not going to be measured in decades and half centuries. It's actually measured in months and years. That's how fast this is happening. And it's important context because as we're talking about the impacts on the workforce, on businesses, on our communities, this is the scariest part of it. It's just happening so fast, right? And so there's some urgency to this and what we're talking about. And that's partly what I want to communicate is the stuff that we're actually doing as people in the field and how that's having an impact and how we are evolving business as we speak in ways that maybe most people don't fully understand, but we need to understand that in order to make good decisions. So the concept, one of the concepts that is nascent, it's happening right now, is something called agentic AI. So I'm going to read you the definition of this. This is by the MIT School of Management, and this just came out in February. And I think that this is a great description of agentic AI. So agentic AI represents a new breed of AI systems that are semi or fully autonomous and able to perceive, reason, and act on their own. Different from chatbots. Chatbot is like ChatGPT, right? Or Claude, right? That field questions and solve problems. This emerging class of AI integrates with other software systems to complete tasks independently or with minimal human supervision. A lot there. Let's break that down. So the first real key concept here is autonomous, which means it operates on its own. Or semi-autonomous, which means that it operates with minimal supervision. Okay? That means that people aren't doing the work, right? This is being done autonomously. Now, we actually have a funny little metaphor, which is called the smart intern. Okay? AI is a smart intern. It's a brilliant intern. It's got 3 degrees, PhDs from Ivy League, phenomenal. Except it's never worked a day in its life. It just doesn't understand your business, doesn't understand context. In fact, it's 16 years old, and it needs a lot of instruction, and really mostly it needs good supervision. Right? That's where we're at right now. I can't tell you where we're going to be at in 3, 4, 5 years, or maybe even less. But right now, it does require supervision. So I want to be very clear about that. Right? But the key is that it's actually operating autonomously. It can sense, reason, and act. This is the scary stuff, right? What we're trying to do is we're trying to connect AI to understand, to perceive, to sense something, so a change, okay? A new something comes in, I want to do something with that something. It needs to understand that. And then it can do something with that. We can teach it to actually reason over the information and then actually take action. And these are the actions that really start to move the needle within the business community and within the business, right? It's one thing to just read information. It's another thing to actually do something with that information. And that's where real action takes place. What happens when we give this access to your tools, to your databases, to Salesforce, to your CRM, to your ticket system, to your project system? If your systems have what's called an API, which is a programmatic interface into your systems, AI can work with it. What happens when we automate that? Scary, right? But this is actually happening right now, and I'll give you some examples of that. But finally, we have this concept of an agentic workforce. This is not a human workforce. This is an agentic workforce. What does that mean? Well, we are building agents, okay? An agent is something that can work autonomously, right? Well, what happens when I put many agents together? and I have them talk to each other. And I got to tell you, there's nothing weirder than watching an AI talk to another AI. It's crazy, but they're coherent conversations, and that is actually how these agentic AI solutions work. You actually have multiple agents talking to each other, trying to solve a problem, and either taking direct action or raising their hand and asking a human for help to help solve the problem or to approve the decision. Okay. So when we're talking about agentic AI, that's what we're talking about. This is not a chat bot. This is not about going into ChatGPT and asking questions. This is about fully autonomous systems that are working in our businesses to increase value at the end of the day. So am I crazy? Is this something that's just, that sounds great, Jeff, but that's not where we're at. This is where we're at. So what you're looking at is a graph by KPMG, and KPMG is a big consultancy. They are mostly focused on the enterprise market. It's important to understand that, right? This is not a study done on the SMB. It's not a study done in Stockton. Clearly, this is done on, multinational corporations and enterprises. So keep that in mind. But understand that we are not that far behind, right? When the cloud came, we were not the first people to adopt the cloud. Enterprise adopted cloud, and we followed behind that. So as the enterprises go, so does the SMB, so does our local communities. And so it's important to watch them because they are leading indicators of what's happening. So within this graph, you'll see this is divided up into 4 quarters, Q1, Q2, Q3, Q4. This is in 2025. And I want to draw your attention to the little black marker here. That is the percentage of these enterprises that are deploying AI agents into their business. In Q1, it was 11%. In Q2, it rose to a third. In Q3, 42%. And you'll see in Q4, it actually dropped down to 26%. When you read the report, you understand that everybody kind of took a pause, right? Trying to learn the lessons and trying to understand what's working and how to move forward, because we are very early in this process. So the market, the technologies, the methodologies, all those things are still being developed. But the sheer amount of investment in agentic AI by these enterprises is significant. And this tells us where kind of the world's going. Okay. So this is my slide to tell you that it's real. Things are happening. This is a now thing. And yes, we are still trying to learn, but it's having impact in the business and in the organizational world. So I want to give you some examples. The first example actually comes from us internally. So early on, we decided to create a little project. We have 20 technicians within our organization. We're a small business. And those 20 technicians generate 1,200 time entries. So you can imagine somebody calls in for help on a ticket. Our technicians solve the problem, and maybe it takes them multiple attempts. They got to get some more information. They're going to do some work over here. They record all their time in time entries. Okay. And then once a week, they have to submit these time entries as part of a timesheet. 1,200 time entries a week that come in, and it costs us 16 hours. One person sitting down at their desk looking at time entries for 2 straight days. Nobody wants to do that job. And frankly, I don't think anybody can really do that very accurately, right? At the end of the day, they're just seeing cross-eyed. Okay. So we actually built an agent that reviews those for us, that is currently and has been in operation since middle of last year. We've reduced that time from 16 hours down to a half hour. It's 15 and a half hours a week that we save. And oh, by the way, we can verify that it's working at 99% accuracy. So I have this role within my organization that I no longer have to pay to do this work. And it is solving this problem for my business, and it is very reliable, and I can have it do whatever I want. I can expand the rules, I can change what it does, and it's going to continue to operate the way I want it to do. And I don't have to buy it snacks and lunch, right? So that is an early agent that we've built that's currently in operation, okay? Another example is we've worked with a local nonprofit. So this is an organization that is responsible for going into homes and doing what's called a home study. Okay, so they have to go in and interview the family for certain reasons. And the end result is that they produce a state report. That's actually multiple reports and forms that they have to fill out that certifies this family and this home for certain things. Okay, here's the deal. It requires a behavioral specialist. If you know anything about that space, we have a massive shortage of behavioral specialists. These are social workers. These are LMFTs. These are folks who have a master's degree level of education. And for a nonprofit to compete in that market for those behavioral specialists, it's very difficult to pay them enough and to attract and retain them. Okay, so really difficult, and this is very common actually in the nonprofit world. So what we did was we helped them build an agent. I have an example of this. This is something called a Plod recorder. It's a Plod AI recorder. I'm not sure if you've seen this before. Little device that I think has like a 16-hour battery time, and it records voices. And here's the cool part about it. It can actually transcribe it, and it'll identify whose voice it is, okay? So the agent that we built, we worked with the nonprofit to take this into the home with permission, of course, sit this down, have it record the entire conversation, and then transcribe it, and then take that data and put this into the agent, and it actually generates all the state required forms for them. Well, I don't have specific data, but my sense is around 90% accurate. Now, again, there's still somebody who has to sign the form, right? So it doesn't take the person out of this, but what it does is it augments them, right? These behavioral specialists, which are in short supply, this is a critical resource for this nonprofit. And for their ability to manage these behavioral specialists coming and going, or their ability to grow, or their ability to handle the load that are required, this is a game changer for them, because we can reduce their time by 75% and allow these folks to do more with less, okay? So this is in production, it's being used, and it's been very successful. And clearly this is something that can affect and benefit nonprofits and other organizations beyond just businesses. So the final example I want to give is in the construction world. So we're working with a large local construction company, and they have a pretty big problem. There's something called pre-construction. And if you've worked in that world before, you understand that, hey, a developer wants to build a new commercial office building. And so they're going to produce a bid or an RFP, and they're going to send it out to all the general contractors in the area. And really, the general contractors have to look at it, and they've got to decide whether they want to respond to this. But the work required to respond to that is significant. They have to do a ton of things. They've got to read the plans. They have to estimate how much material is required. They have to estimate how much labor is required. They have to produce scopes of work to identify, make sure that they're covering everything. And then they have to negotiate and create a proposal that encompasses all these things. So what we're talking about is this workflow within the organization. And oh, by the way, if they get it wrong, they're on the hook for it. So if they miss something in the scope and they didn't bid it and they forgot, they have to pay for it out of pocket. This particular organization, that loss has been measured at $500,000 to $1 million a year. So right there, if we can solve that problem, we've just saved them $1 million without doing anything else. So we're working with them to build a multi-agent, agentic solution that has a decision agent. It makes a decision. Does this opportunity meet our competencies? Okay. It has a takeoffs agent, which will do read the plans, literally read the PDF of the plans and determine how much material is required. It'll estimate the labor. It'll generate the scope of work. And finally, it'll take all that information and put that into a proposal. So these are all each individual agents that are written to solve a particular problem within the organization. But the key to this is that there's this orchestrator. And this orchestrator is what actually divvies out the work. It distributes the work. And it brings in the agents as necessary, depending on what's needed. And again, these are real technologies. These are real things that are happening in real time and having a massive benefit. And so the point that I'm trying to make here is that the business use of AI is significant, even in our valley, even in our region, right? Not necessarily impacts on the workforce potentially, but the significant economic impacts to the businesses and then, of course, to our community. So how does an organization get there? How does an organization go from I've never heard of AI to implementing agentic AI solutions. So there's really three components to this. So we do an AI transformation engagement. We work with businesses, are working with businesses to help them manage this process. We have 5 pillars as part of that. We're not going to go through that, but what's really important is to understand what are like the key requirements to actually do this. So the first thing that really has to be in place is leadership. Your organization, the leader, all problems are leadership problems, right? We have to decide what we're going to do. The leader has to lead from the front, right? The little icon here, the guy at the flag, he's going upstairs, he's saying, follow me. That's important. We got to start there. The leader has to understand where we're going. Very important. The second part is policy. Okay, we decided where we're going. Now we got to decide how we're going to get there. What are the rules? Are we going to be aggressive? Are we going to be conservative? What are the guardrails? And where do we want to go? And how are we going to do this? And what's our culture going to be? And that goes to policy. We had to make some decisions about how we're going to engage AI. And the third one, and maybe more important than the other ones, is that there's an investment required. There's an investment of time, of energy, of focus, sometimes to the exclusion of other things, and frankly, dollars. If you can imagine these automations, it's like a robot, right? It's not doing things, but it's doing things within your organization, and those require capital. You know, if you were going to buy a robot for a manufacturing firm, you're going to have to invest. We know it's going to pay off long term, but I got to come up with some money out of pocket in order to get those efficiencies. And this isn't a matter specifically of handing somebody a version of ChatGPT and walking away and saying, we've got AI, right? It's about looking at your business saying, I want to solve that problem. I want to automate this problem. And so that's going to require some upfront investment. So how does this relate to our community that we live in? The reality is that the same 3 things apply: leadership, policy, and investment. So this is me now coming in from a business owner. I'm not a city planner. I'm not elected, but I am a business owner and I am a practitioner in the area. And what I see is the same 3 needs in our community that will help us and allow us to benefit from AI. Okay, leadership, policy, and investment. So again, with all my caveats and disclaimers about me being just a lowly business owner, here's what I think we can do. Okay, here's what I'd love to see, right, as a member of the community. We could start with simply identifying the industries with the highest economic impact. Not necessarily just the workforce size, but who are our largest contributors in our community. Okay, we know some of those things: logistics and warehousing and manufacturing and even farming, right? Healthcare, education, a lot of things that we know. But let's identify those and target them specifically within our community, and then let's create working groups. Let's try to get folks together in those industries and build out some consensus-based guidance and policy around AI. Let's build sub-communities that are interested in the same thing and have similarities, and help to create some guidance and policy at the community level that can benefit these industries. Let's implement some supportive programs. Maybe let's create some communication to those industries, into those trades. Let's talk about how we can support those industries more directly. Again, this is about benefiting the overall community. So let's invest some of that time and energy and communicate and get word out about AI and how, for example, this guidance and policy, how it can be leveraged best for those industries. And then finally, the investment part. Let's create grant programs. Let's find some dollars that we can then invest into these businesses who are looking to engage AI, whether it's through AI transformation or agentic AI solutions, or even training that we talk about and workforce development. Those are all areas that are, I think, really needed to help our area move forward. And that's really the most important thing is how do we move forward? So there's some urgency behind this because we talked about this. This is the fourth industrial revolution that we're in the middle of. And it's happening super fast. We're measuring these things in months and years and not decades, right? So by the time we start thinking about it, it's already moved forward. So the urgency is real. We have to start taking action. I'll give you a couple of examples. I told you one of them actually through Johns Hopkins and the 100x. There's a 100x increase in AI every 4 months is what they're seeing internally. But I recently hired a software developer. And one of my interview questions with this person was, tell me about your view of AI and how it fits into your coding environment. And his answer to me, didn't hesitate, right off the cuff, was AI should be writing 100% of the code. Now think about that. From where we were, I know as I was, going through my career, we all heard, hey, you become a software developer, you're set for life, right? You're going to make a lot of money. You're never going to not need a job. And now we have a developer who's been in the business for 15 years telling me that I shouldn't be coding anymore. Last year, it was maybe 10%. In 1 year, it's 100%, right? That's how fast this is moving. It's changing the game, and we need to be on top of it. The community risk, the impacts to the community is really less about job loss. I think the report really helped to put a fine point on that we don't have to worry as much, right? But there's still this massive opportunity, and we want to make sure that we're not falling behind economically, right? We already have this disparity, right, with Sacramento, let's say, and in the Bay Area. We've got to make sure that we don't fall further behind, right? Just because they're maybe ahead of us in AI. We have an opportunity here. And so really the foundation of this, and the thing I want to end with, is the fact that in order for us to remain competitive at the regional level, it's going to require action. It's going to require action at this level, at our elected level, the business community level. And the three things that we need in all those places is leadership, policy, and investment. Thanks very much. This is the QR code has my contact information. So if you have any questions, please feel free to reach out via my email address, or you can scan a QR code. Thank you.
All right, well, that concludes our presentations, and we can open it up for questions. If there's any in the room, if you have any questions on Zoom, put them in the chat, and we can wait around for a few minutes and have a discussion, or we can wrap it up.
Great presentation. So, which frontier AI are you using mostly? Claude, Gemini, and OpenAI. I know Claude code is pretty big, but now all of a sudden OpenAI came with Kodak. So, what's the leading edge for you?
Okay. So we actually use 3 products internally. So we use ChatGPT. That's kind of where we started. Was in ChatGPT. It was kind of the best out there. Now we've moved, and for different things, we use Claude. Actually, Claude has really come up just in terms of the chatbot and the feature set and things like Claude Co-work, right? Mm-hmm. And then we also use Copilot, which is Microsoft's product. It has a much better integration into your corporate knowledge, like SharePoint and files, your Teams chats and your Outlook emails and calendar events and things like that. The story there is really, really good. In addition, we when we're doing custom AI stuff, we're working within the Microsoft world because there's some really great things for businesses that allow us to surface your data and to build automatic systems through there. But there's place for all the frontier models because they're all good at different things, and we're starting to leverage them in the ways that they are best used.
So I'll ask one more question. I really could sit here all day and quiz you.
Yeah.
But Open Plum.
Yeah.
Where are you with that? And tell people what that's all about.
Great question. I love that question. And so OpenClaw is an it's an agent that's more like a personal assistant. And so imagine your own personal AI that's running all the time, that has, you give access to do anything you want to and can look up anything that you want to on demand. And so it's not like ChatGPT. This actually takes action. Okay. You can give it skills. My favorite story, you might have heard this, is someone was using OpenClaw. They asked it to book a restaurant for them. Did you hear the story?
No.
No. They asked it to book a restaurant for them. And so it went by default to go to OpenTable, right, to do an online reservation. That restaurant wasn't listed on OpenTable. So OpenClaw went and got a voice AI skill on its own, called the restaurant to make the reservation and confirm the reservation on its own. So that's the sort of thing it solved, right? It was autonomous. It reasoned and said, oh, I can't book that over OpenTable. Let me just solve that problem for you, right? So that's how powerful OpenClaw and similar, Claude Cowork is somewhat similar to it. Here's the issue. The issue is security. We do not recommend OpenClaw unless you are aware and able to handle the security risks. And even Claude Cowork, if you look at it, it's an alpha preview, and there's some significant known vulnerabilities for Claude Cowork. So my general advice is be careful, and be especially careful when you're connecting some of these agentic systems into your data, because you don't know what it's going to do with it.
Just one last one. Okay, so you've been in business for 20 years. Over the last year and a half or so, you started using AI to really help your business.
Yeah.
What kind of impact have you seen for your business in terms of growth, manpower, whatever, cost overall?
Yeah, it's had a massive impact. And my industry is interesting because at some point, AI is going to be able to solve your IT problems. And right now, if you go in and tell Copilot what your problem is, or ChatGPT, it's going to be able to solve that problem. So we're seeing benefits. I gave you an example here, but for us in triage, in problem resolution, in assigning, scheduling our staff, we're early in the process, but it is already having a significant impact for us. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions?
Question.
Hey, go ahead online. Go ahead, Armando. Or you can type it in chat if you like.
Can you hear me?
We can hear you.
Oh, okay. Sorry about that. Thank you for all the wonderful information. Very fascinating. And I appreciate it, because I've been trying to get more information on myself to get a better understanding of it. My name is Armando Larry, I'm Delta College trustee. What recommendations did you make to us at Delta College moving forward to help ourselves and our community move forward with AI, so that we're not too far behind and trying to catch up?
Armando, can you just enunciate a little bit more and identify who the question is for?
The question is just for the panel there. The question is, I'm a Delta College trustee, and I asked you the question, what can we do from a community college perspective in workforce development to help our workforce be more prepared for this AI?
So I'll just start. I think a really important implication is that you can't stop training anymore. We have to train people to continue to learn throughout their life cycle. You can't, a single credential isn't going to matter. As these technologies continue to evolve, we have to rethink the learning process, because these jobs are going to continue to change over time. As the AI technology evolves, the interactions and the skills to manage them are going to change. And if you're coming in from a job that maybe is no longer as needed and is very different, you need a set of skills that will enable your managing those tools in a way that you hadn't before. And that is going to create a real continual learning dynamic, which has been discussed for ages. But that alignment with industry and learning providers is going to be even more important to make sure that what is being put out there is being taught in our classrooms and in our different platforms that we're offering them. And I think that's again, it's been happening before, but it's creating increased urgency on making sure that those skills that are being taught are aware of the technologies and the capabilities. And in the same way, it's lowering the bar to provide the training, but it's also increasing the need to have the different trainings working together and to thinking about how we create an ecosystem, a learning ecosystem that is aligned to the needs of the region's workforce and where the businesses are going, where the jobs are headed, and coordinating together. That would be just my general comment. I don't know if Ezra or Jeff, if you have anything further.
So the question is about. I guess the comment I might make in that is that, so in the industry, we have a saying, AI isn't going to take your job. Someone who knows AI is going to take your job, right? And it's important that the educational system and the training process looks at what is uniquely human and the skills to interact with AI. And those are different things. And so, for example, in the software development world, it still takes a developer to understand how they want this to be produced and to understand how the architecture needs to work and to make human decisions. But the skill is no longer coding. It's how to work with AI in order to accomplish a specific task. And so our skill set and our education pretty much at every level needs to be prepared for the AI future where that is true. What is it that's uniquely human about us? It's typically decision making and creativity and judgment and the critical thinking skills that, frankly, we've seen eroded in a lot of ways. These become really the keys to the kingdom. And so we need to teach those, the core fundamentals of the different occupations and positions that we're going to take. But then how do we translate that into best leverage the tools that we have access to?
Thank you, Jeff. We've got a question in the chat. I'm going to read it for Gwen. She asks, for companies that don't have a formal AI implementation plan, but want to start exploring areas of optimization, where would you recommend they begin? For example, an engineering or planning?
Yeah, so what's very interesting is that the organization itself tends to have the best view of its own challenges and opportunities. So in the work that we do in AI transformation, we engage the leadership and work through what we call it obstacles and opportunities are. We want to get alignment, business alignment, to understand what the goals of the organization are. We want to identify what the obstacles and opportunities are, and we want to engage the leadership to start developing a list of it's like a wish list and initiatives. And then we build an AI committee who is also going to surface some of these same ideas, but at a bottom-up level, at a tactical level, because these are the folks who are working day in and day out in their jobs, and they know the areas. We call them chores, right? It's the thing nobody wants to do. That's the lowest hanging fruit for most AI solutions, is to do the thing that humans really don't want to do and aren't very good at. It's the repetitive things that are high value and high accuracy requirements. And so that's a big part of it, is surveying the folks who have a vested interest in the success of the business and who have been engaged and have the experience in there to identify where the highest opportunities are. I hope that answers the question.
Thank you. Any other questions? Person or in Zoom?
I might just add one comment. I see. So while we take a look at your comment there, Don, I think it's important in terms of the regional readiness that we think about how we work, our systems work together in terms of power systems, infrastructure systems, and production systems. If they aren't working together, AI is making implementation and activation a lot faster process. So our bottlenecks in the physical infrastructure are going to become more acute because those analyses, the forecasting, that work is going to be done quicker. And those areas, those places, those businesses, those regions that can do that quicker are going to have greater opportunities for their business's attraction and retention, because they have to be able to move quick and respond quickly. And that also moves the place. Are we a place that is doing things or not? And AI is going to be increasing, I think, that opportunity for regions that respond well to that. Yeah.
This comment is, so I'll just answer this next question, which is about ongoing certificate programs and ongoing information for agencies and government bodies to understand how to engage AI and how to continue to stay abreast of it. I do not personally have knowledge of any certificate programs, especially on the government side. However, there's a lot of training out there. The problem is truly that it's moving so fast. And so what I would recommend is identifying a provider whose job it is to stay abreast and understand how the latest technology and the trends can be applied, and engage with that organization to solve some of these problems. In terms of like end user certification, there's a lot out there through most of the major learning providers, LinkedIn. I can't think of the other ones off the top of my head, but there are foundational AI courses that can be offered there. But at the sort of leadership level, there's not a lot that I'm aware of, but I don't know if maybe Thomas knows of other ones.
I guess my question is really more about core competencies. So many of our local government agencies have very similar functions, and I think that there's some level of kind of baseline knowledge and competency. As was just stated, as I heard of this other conference, AI can take your job. An applicant who knows AI is going to compete, and that's what's going to take your job. So how do we raise that bar or establish a format? Some of the classes haven't been written yet because like you said, it's moving so fast, it's hard to keep up with it. But I think a format or a structure where it could be offered on a regular basis might add some comfort and competency.
I think we heard all of that. You're saying that the need to develop a sort of a core government competency in terms of managing and handling AI. Is that what you were talking about, Tom?
That's exactly right. Yeah, something that's a baseline. Even if we don't know the content yet, it's kind of like when e-commerce first came out, we didn't know what the courses were yet because it was changing so fast. That's what it reminds me of. I think in this case, we're looking at something similar where there's a framework and the content is yet to come, but it's structured in such a way where there's an annual way to get, those regular updates on a rolling basis and understand.
Yeah, I think that's a very important point. And I think also what's important is again, needing to dialogue around what is the direction that we want to go. I think AI offers opportunities for small government, or also enabling large government to do more things than it would in other ways. And what is the policy direction that we want to head in terms of how do we implement it and how do we work with others in terms of implementing it? Those are critical questions that you have to discuss before we design and give that direction to what is the system that we want to implement and the timing around it. And I think it comes back to questions about business opportunities. AI is making small businesses more competitive, and it's enabling large businesses to in-house more things than ever before. And those are very different. You know, you could have a flat organization, or you could have a large organization with a very powerful high end. And similarly, with Ezra's analysis, the low-skilled worker can do more with AI. They can add more profit and value to a company, and the top executive suite can do more. But where is that, the benefits from that addition gonna land? Who gets those shares, and what is considered equitable? Those are important conversations that need to be decided. And also, I think, again, to your point, it comes back to what do we need to think about as government in terms of managing those questions, and the actual implementation in local government are interrelated.
So, yeah, back to you. Just wanted to make an additional comment. So, as they've mentioned, AI is moving very fast, but so there's a basic need to understand what AI is all about, which is AI literacy. Okay, and you can actually go to Google, Meta, or you can go online and actually ask for courses around AI literacy. Okay, start there. Okay, and then actually I found a organization that actually ongoingly train people in being AI entrepreneurial as a sprint, a 16-week, and it's after 16 weeks it start over again with another sprint. But also it also has AI consultancy as well. It talks about workflow and so forth. This is very much more high level, and it's very advanced. Okay, so but you know I learned a whole lot. It's like very fast, but for the most part, you got to start with just basic AI literacy, and then work your way up to where you want to go with it.
Yeah, thank you. I do want to make another comment on methodology and framework. So we've put together a framework that we use, and in that process, did a lot of work to find, is there an established framework and approach to doing this sort of thing? And the reality is there really isn't. You have something called the capability maturity model, which is out there, but it's not specifically around AI transformation and ongoing management. And the framework that we would put together probably isn't suitable for a government agency. But one of the comments I want to make there is that all of this starts with policy, and from a compliance standpoint, that is all AI is data. And what we need to start with is a clear internal policy for AI acceptable use and what's called data use. And this involves making sure that, first of all, folks aren't entering in regulated data into personal ChatGPT accounts, right? So we have to have a policy in place. And this is what drives as the starting point, it's the foundation for a responsible engagement of AI. And then you need to make sure that within your organization, you're thinking about data security and how you're going to protect that data, because this is the wild, wild west. If you don't have the ability to engage and think about data from a classification and from a data loss prevention standpoint, these are the starting points, because you can't sort of release this into the wild and not have good guardrails for the acceptable use of the data and which AI systems are approved and not approved. And those rules are very different depending on the organization or the agency. So don't have a lot to offer on the government side of the framework and methodology standpoint, just to say that start with an AI acceptable use policy and a data use policy and make sure that you have a way to enforce that.
All right. Thank you for the great conversation so far. If there's any last questions, now's the time.
Well, thanks, Isaiah. And again, thanks to SJCOG. Thanks to Ezra and Jeff for your very insightful presentations today. And thank you all for joining us, and look forward to continuing this conversation as we obviously have a lot more work to do and work to stay on top of this rapidly changing world that we're living in. Thank you.
Thank you. Have a good day.